Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hip Senior Podcast, Book Edition. My name is Marion Bailey. I will be your host. Today, we are talking to Turner Grant. He wrote the book To Venus and Back, One Man's Quest to Rediscover Love. Turner, welcome to the podcast.
Marianne, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you for joining us. Okay, so To Venus and Back. We're looking at your book. It's a beautiful cover. And tell us a little bit about you and why you wrote the book.
Happy to do that. I am an architect. I live in the Washington, D.C. area. I am a father of twin boys, and I was married for 20 years. Ironically, today that we're doing this interview is the 13th anniversary of the passing of my wife, and it was very unexpected.
So sorry.
And my twins were 14 years old at the time. One is a special needs child. I was very fortunate to have a wonderful, supportive in-law family. And for the next 2 years, it was grieving, trying to hold the family together, and to right the ship, as I called it, try to get things back on track. I had one son who was about to start high school. We know what high school is all about.
Yep.
I had another son. My special needs son was about to start and started that year, a few months after my wife's passing, a residential school program in Massachusetts, 450 miles away. And I also had to help everybody, friends and family, deal with the loss of my wife. So for the next 2 years, it was all about that. And then at the suggestion of, I had a wonderful mother-in-law, her name was Mary. And when I was letting it all out and bleeding my heart at dinner, which we did every week, I told her I felt like I was getting crushed by the events of the past, the death of my wife, and all that was on me. And somehow I had to let it go. And she said, I think you should. Let me know what I can do to help. And then she said the words that launched me into finding my future. And maybe a new woman in your life might be nice. Maybe. 4 weeks later, I pushed myself out to go to a big social event here where I live. And as a bit of background, I had just run for Congress. Now, I'm an architect, but I'd run for Congress, and it had to do with my special needs son that got me involved in politics. Obviously, I pulled out of the race, but I was somewhat known in my local community. I pushed myself out to do that. That was the beginning of what would be 3 years of just intensive, both a search for my future and I hoped a search for love. And you go through these very different phases after loss. Divorce is no less of a loss. It's a different kind of loss, but death is a certain kind of loss. And after that 3 years, there were several people, female friends or female relatives, who came along with me on this journey, who were trying to guide me. When it was all over and I was sharing stories, and you hear this all the time. I think everybody hears this at some point. You should write a book. Those stories are so crazy, what you went through. You should write a book. I had never written a book, and the thing you need to do or have to write a book is time. And because of other circumstances that occurred, I found myself with the time. So I thought, okay, I'm going to write a book, because this was still, online dating had been going on. A lot of books hadn't been written about it. So I was going to write a book about the crazy dating stories. I swore I wasn't going to talk much about the passing of my wife, but I found that I actually had to do that. So the book, while it's about dating and my search for love, it's also about a search for life and coming out of the darkness of grief to find life again. They're very much interwoven. So that's what the book is about. It's one, to share the crazy dating stories. I found my target audience are women mostly, but some men between 40 and 75. And I have found people who have been married for a long time and are always going to be married till death do they part, have read the book as beta readers or early readers and didn't know what online dating was about or how it even worked and all the pitfalls and things that can go wrong. And they were absolutely shocked and stunned, but grateful that they could read about it without actually having to do it after having read about it. And so they're never going to get divorced. There were people who had been through it, women who read the book, but never knew the guy's perspective. And I discovered after I wrote the book and I was trying to go the traditional publishing route, this is a self-published book, and I wrote a book proposal and had to research other books. There are dating books written by women for women. Spoiler alert, the guys don't fare very well.
Okay.
And there are dating books written by men for men, and there's bro books written with locker room mentalities. And spoiler alert for those, the women don't fare very well. And quite frankly, the men don't fare very well either who wrote the books. But there wasn't a book from a man about dating women for women. And that's what this book is about. So it has been an eye-opening for those who have read it and my beta readers who have read it. It's been eye-opening to understand how this all works from the guy's perspective. And those who are married have also said, based on reading your book, I am never, ever getting divorced. Or if I do, I am never, ever doing online dating. And people truly couldn't believe the story. So I really wanted to share. I couldn't believe what happened to me. And it's not a how-to book. It's a what happened to me book, and you can take from it, I'm not going to do what he did, or now I know if I do what he did, here are the cautionary pitfalls and things I need to look out for.
Like, I've read your book, and there were times in the book that I had to rationalize in my head because I was like, okay, I know Turner. We have met, obviously. And I know that this is a true story, but it does read like a fiction at times. If it reads like a romance book at other, it's hard knowing exactly what genre that fits into books. But I will say it is captivating. It has kept me reading it. And as somebody who divorced after 20 years and ended a long-term relationship after that, it's, do I want to get back into dating? And then reading your book has really reinforced that point with me as well. So it's definitely eye-opening, guys. I highly recommend that you get on Kindle or order his book. Click the purchase button. It'll take to Amazon and you can purchase it through there. Turner, people read your book, they set it down. If they could only have one thought about your book, what do you hope that one thought is that they would take away from this book?
The one thought I would have, and it's a memoir, just to be clear about the genre.
Right.
The one takeaway I would hope people would grasp is that if you're out there looking for love and things don't go the way you hoped, just know it's not you. You're not the problem. I question myself over and over when things didn't go the way I'd hoped and didn't understand why they didn't go the way I had hoped. I've had people reach out to me through the website and share their very personal stories. It's been amazing what has happened and how people have responded. And some of the stories are heartbreaking, but again, like in my case, they've experienced circumstances that were thrust upon them, that happened to them, and they question, why does this happen to me? And in the process, they think there's something wrong with them, that they cause all these things to happen. And that's why I say the one takeaway is it's not you. Life happens. There are things that happen, but just don't put that on yourself. Please don't. So that would be one takeaway. The other takeaway that I hope, and it may be a smaller segment of the people who read it, but it's really important to me. And I've always wondered, just offhand, not seriously, but what happens to the people who are left when, a mother and father passes away? What happens to the children? What happens to the spouse? What happens with their lives? This is a story about that. And it's obviously one story, but I think it portrays the struggles. It portrays the guilt. If for me, and I've heard from others who are widowed, there's a fair amount of guilt when you put yourself back out there because you feel like you're betraying your spouse, and in my case, my wife.
Right.
But I knew she would have wanted me to find happiness again, but that does not alleviate the feelings of guilt you have. So I hope it helps people who've experienced devastating and tragic loss to share my story so they know they're not alone, so that they can read. I'm very open about the feelings I felt and I write about, so they can nod their head. Yeah, that's how I was. And it's okay. That is the way you feel. And it's okay. It is part of the grieving process. It's part of the process of getting back into life. And it does take time. So I hope there is a connection and that resonates with others who've had devastating loss and are trying to move on with their lives. And they simply ask the question, how is this supposed to work? My story hopefully gives them some sense that it can work. It's a bumpy road, but and I hate cliches, but it was true. You have to put one foot in front of the other, and time may not heal all wounds, but it does heal quite a few where you can once again find life and love.
Okay. So, glimpse into the future. Any book number 2 coming out?
Oh, it's interesting. When I wrote the book, I wrote a manuscript that told the whole story. I had 3 editors, 3 incredible women editors, and the book got cut down quite a bit. So there's all these chapters that hit the cutting room floor, as it were. And there is a section on my website that my publishing consultant came up with, and it was Ask the Author or Ask Turner. And it asked a lot of questions. And I realized from meeting people and talking to people, they have so many questions. So between the chapters that were taken away and the stories that are being shared with me and the questions being asked, maybe there will be another book. I thought I only had one in me, but given the response, there may be number 2. But I appreciate you asking about that.
I hope there is. All right,
Thank you.
everybody. Turner Grant, thank you so much for joining us and talking about your book, To Venus and Back, One Man's Quest to Rediscover Love.
Thanks so much, Marianne. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.